Anya Dula, and welcome to the new Doin Motherhood Podcast, where we will talk about all things Black mothers today. I'm so excited. This is the first day of the new podcast, the first recording. It's been a minute since I have talked with you all. Of course, if you have been here for a while, you know that this was previously the Intercultured podcast with Anya Dula. We have changed to the Doin Motherhood Podcast with Anya Dula. Like I said, we're talking about all things Black mothers today. I did give an explanation in a previous episode of the podcast on my Instagram page for why the change in this podcast. So you can refer back to those to figure out or to learn why the reason for the change. But listen, 2020 was a doozy for most of us. It was a doozy for most of us. For me, I came to realize that for Black mothers, we just need to have more places that are sacred for us, that center Black women, that center Black mothers, and give us a space to talk, grow, learn, heal, all of that together. So I'm really excited to get this started today. So there will be a couple of changes in the format. For the most part, it will sound the same, but this is now going to be a weekly episode podcast. So there's more coming to you. We're also looking for so much more listener engagement. So this is what's going to change. What's different is we will have a long form episode and then a short form episode. Short episodes will be one of two different segments. The first segment is one that you will see on the next episode called Critical Analysis segment. What we do is, or what I will do, is talk about the main segment we've been discussing and break it down using media like movies, books, films, anything of that sort to break down and make the ideas more concrete, right? Make it make sense to all of us. And then aside from the critical analysis episodes, there's also a chance for you as listeners to engage. And that's what I'm most excited about. That segment is called the Ask Anya segment. If you refer back to the second episode of this podcast, I talk about Bryce's birth story, and the very last segment is the What I Love segment. And I talk about what I love about this kid. And I shared the story about his soccer journey and how he basically had the roadmap before any of us knew anything about how to get him to his goals in soccer. And he had that roadmap at 9. And so now here we are. He's about to turn 18. He's a junior in high school. He's already being recruited. So far, 3 universities are recruiting him. It's a very exciting process. It's kind of a grueling process as well. And I'm having all these mixed emotions, right? Like I'm excited for him. I'm excited about his future. I feel very confident in his future and like the goals that he set for himself and what he's looking to achieve. I'm also confident in him going away to school. I am very confident about that. I, on the other hand, am struggling. I'm struggling because this is my baby, right? This is the last kid. When he leaves, I will be a true empty nester. And I think I've shared this with you all before. I have never lived as a single person in my life. It has not happened. If you recall, and if you don't recall, because you haven't listened, go on back to the beginning so you get all the nitty gritty about what's going on in our lives. But I had my oldest son when I was a very young teenager. And I went from, being a teen mom, graduating high school, I joined the military. And so you see, I left my home, I went to the military, I met my husband in the military, or my ex-husband, met him in the military, got married. And so my life has been continuously living with a bunch of men. I don't have daughters. And so now this opens up a new world for me. And I'm kind of spilling into the main segment. So why don't we just go ahead and make that move, huh? We'll go into the main segment and talk about me being an empty nester at 41. Whew. All right, y'all. So it's Anya Doula, and we're talking about Black motherhood today. And I really want to start this episode with where I am right now as a Black mother today and what's going on with my life. So like I said in the first segment, I'm 40 years old now. My youngest son will be turning 18 this summer and going into his senior year. And right now he's being recruited for soccer. And so it's May. I'm a full year out from what my new life is going to look like. I have never lived as a single person. I have always been taking care of children. And so this is really it's a new adventure. That's how I like to think of it. It's going to be a new adventure, but there's a lot of planning and a lot of feelings and a lot of just, all the things that come with what happens when we're entering into a new phase of our lives and transitioning into a new phase. So what are some of the things that I'm thinking about? I'm going to talk about me first, and then I'll get back to the kid because this is about Black mothers today, right? So first thing I'm thinking about is, where am I going to live, right? And not only where am I going to live in terms of what city will I be in, it's probably going to be Houston, but also just like what type of living situation do I want, right? What will my abode be? That's what I'm thinking about. What will my abode be as a young Black woman, empty nester, right? So I'm thinking about, am I going to stay in Houston? I love Houston. I love Houston so much. This is the city that has really grown both me and my boys. But I'm also considering that expat life. I don't know so listen, the pandemic and being on lockdown has given me a lot of time to explore all the different Facebook groups out there and different groups going on. And so there's a lot of talk about Black families, so complete Black families that have become expats, and also single Black women who are just finding a life for themselves and creating a life for themselves on their own terms. And that involves traveling outside of the country. Some people are looking at, being a long-term expat. They get to a country, they love it, that's where they're going to be. Others are a little more nomadic, and I have a feeling that that's probably where I'll find myself, right? I'll probably be part-time in Houston, part-time in another country, and doing the digital nomad thing so that I'm always working and doing what needs to be done to take care of myself, right? Keep that standard of living up that I want to see for myself. But if I don't change cities, if Houston really is home for me, the way that it's been home for me and my family for the last 14 years, I've got all these decisions to make. And in what's interesting, what I'm finding being, as I'm thinking about becoming an empty nester, is that this is the first time in my life where all the decisions that I make are solely based on me. And that feels good. It also feels a little bit scary. It feels a little bit like, because you know what it is. Those of you who, especially if you have children who are in grade school or higher, most of the time we're making the decisions about where we live based on what we want for our children. We're thinking of the neighborhoods that we want. Are they safe neighborhoods? Are they neighborhoods where our kids will, find those lifelong friendships and be able to grow, right? And see the example of productive citizens that we want them to grow into. We are basing it on schools, what schools are around, how well those schools are, and how well our children perform. And then there's also just the idiosyncrasies that come within each individual family, right? So what's going to be good for the whole of the family? Well, now I don't have all of those things to think about. And it seems like in my mind, it's completely opened. I have too many choices. What's that called? There's a term for like when you have way too many choices to make and then it just kind of voids everything out and you're just sitting there. So you see why I'm, a year out considering all these things. So when I think about if Houston really is going to be where I stay long term, if this is my city, and it is my city, if this is my city, what neighborhood do I live in? We used to live in A-Leaf out on the southwest west side of town. Now we currently live in 3rd Ward. But I don't know if, I don't know if 3rd Ward is where I will stay. I do know I'm not going back outside the loop. That's for sure. And those of you who are Houstonians know exactly why. So what does that look like? Does it look like me staying in a house in the 3rd Ward area or finding another house in some of the neighboring neighborhoods? Like, do I look in East Downtown, Montrose? Also, what type of living do I want to have? Am I going to continue to live in a house? I doubt it. I don't want to do all that cleaning. I'm tired. I'm tired, right? So do I stay in a house? Do I downsize into a smaller house? I am feeling like a high rise might be my next move. That sounds real sexy for a 41-year-old empty nester, adventuring into the next part of her life. We'll see. But those are the things that I'm thinking about. I'm also looking at what it takes to prepare us both for this huge change. And so I mentioned earlier, I do have an older son. My older son is 25. He will be 26 this summer. And so he has gone off and, he's living out of state now. He's working as an attorney. He's got his whole life going. But when he went off to college, it didn't feel as drastic a change. And of course, because my younger one was still home. So there were preparations that I had to think about for sending him off to college. And it's a little bit different this time because this time I'm thinking about what it takes to send this young one off to college and then what that looks like for me. So the preparations that I'm making for my son is all about him taking care of himself, right? Making sure that he has a couple of staple meals he knows how to cook so he can do that for himself when he gets where he's going. Making sure that he's taking care of his space and being responsible to himself and talking to him about the responsibility that he has to whoever his roommate might be, or multiple roommates, and the responsibility that he has to the team, that what he does not only matter on the field, that everything he does in his waking, living day becomes responsibility that he has not only for himself, but to his community members and his team members. Communication is a huge one. Let me just tell y'all. I don't know. I like to think, I'm on a podcast, right? So clearly I have some communication skills. I would like to think that I have trained my children up in using those communication skills. It's a struggle with this one. It's a struggle with the 17-year-old. In fact, today, I'll give you an example. Today is Wednesday. I chose the podcast recording time on Wednesdays because that's his usual day off. I don't have to worry about getting him to a place and then finding myself in the place I need to be. And sure enough, as I'm getting up this morning and getting myself ready and preparing to walk out the door, he comes in and tells me he has to be at practice. He knew yesterday he had to be at practice today. Did he communicate that with me? No. So there's a lot of talking to him about his communication style and how, when he's away from home, I anticipate his needs all the time. And so even when there is a little flub in schedules or something like that, I can make that up. I've learned the art of pivoting as a mother and making things happen the way they need to happen. But I'm trying to get him to understand that when he's away from home and he does not have either of his parents or his older brother to make those pivots, that he will probably find himself at some point or another stuck, and he's not going to like that. So these are the conversations that we're having at this point, so that hopefully it sticks. And if it doesn't stick, that's just the lesson that they have to learn, right? You know, we've all had our errors that we have to make. And so I just want to make sure that the foundation is good for him. Also, him being a young Black male athlete. And that's something that is especially important to me and to his dad. And so in the talks that we're having with the coaches that are recruiting him, because most of the schools that are recruiting him are PWIs. And for those who are not familiar, PWI is an acronym for primary white institution. And they are in cities that are primarily white. And so just in thinking about what the social climate is right now regarding race, regarding Black men and police brutality, and young Black men and police brutality, Black people as a whole and police brutality, because we know it's happening to women just as much as it's happening to men, but really making sure his dad and I are really making sure that that is a key conversation that is had, because for us, it is important that the coaches and that they are in tune to what the social climate is. Again, these cities are cities that are primarily white cities, and these institutions are primarily white institutions. And, you know, maybe this is an assumption, but a lot of times the conversations that are happening in Black homes are not conversations that are happening in white homes, right? And whatever about that, I need to make sure, and his dad certainly wants to make sure, that those who are going to be charged with his care and his matriculation through school and his becoming a young man are well aware of that as well. And so those are definitely conversations that we're having with him. And they're also conversations that we're having with the coaching staff in order to ensure, as best as possible, nothing is in our complete control, but that the people who are around him and taking care of him while he's away from home are paying attention and open to what is, what he might be going through. It's also going to be important to them because whatever he's feeling at home in his dorm room or whatever is going to affect him on the field. So it behooves everybody to be in touch with that, right? And then finally, I'm finding it very important to have conversations with him about his own self-identification as a young man, as a young athlete, as a young Black man, right? That he is secure in who he is. And that's a tough thing for a teenager. Like, how many of us were secure with who we are, with who we were when we were teenagers? That's really tough. But I firmly believe that when we allow children to self-ID, that it creates a space for them to become self-aware. Right. And so when they are self-aware and they're learning who they are within themselves, right, without my direct influence, or their parents' direct influence, or whoever it is that's in charge of their care, primarily, that when they are able to identify and make an identification for themselves, those are children who go to other places and become well-adjusted young adults. They know who they are, so they're a lot less likely to be swayed by peer pressure. They know who they are, so they understand what their responsibilities are, and they're more likely to go into their new situation doing what they need to do to accomplish the goals that they set out to accomplish. And so there's an effort that I'm making to foster the type of conversations that need to happen so that he can start to figure out, well, who am I? Like, who am I outside of my mom, outside of my dad, outside of all the environments that he has been in so far, so that when he goes out, he knows exactly, he knows who he is, and he can make the adjustments in any environment. I think that's something that's key. Now, getting back to me, the Black mama in this whole situation, right? The things I'm preparing myself for. One is downsizing, because like I said, I'm not trying to be in a big house anymore. I don't want to clean a big house anymore. I don't need all this extra space anymore. And so, and especially in considering, that there is a possibility that I will spend some time out of the country. There's a possibility that I'm going to move. It's a strong possibility I'm going to move into a sexy high rise. That if I move into this high rise, that everything that's in our house is not going to fit. And so it's a little bit, it's hard to let your things go. It's really hard to let your things go. And I didn't realize how hard it was going to be. The first thing that I determined can go out of my house is everything that's in our formal dining room. And then I got into my formal dining room and I was like, but I love this table so much. And I remember the day that I found this table, right? And there's all the stories that get created around the table. We don't even eat at that table. We might eat at that table twice a year. It's become more of like a work table storage situation, right? It's where the printer is. But I'm finding it really hard to talk myself into how we're going to get rid of the things that I know I will no longer need. I'm also thinking about all the extra time that I'm going to have on my hands. With this one, it is a lot of driving around for soccer, and he is on a very demanding soccer schedule. He's on a demanding soccer schedule because he plays for the Houston Dynamo Academy. And I tell him all the time, and I've even told them, they feel a lot like me to the military. Like when they call, you go, that's that. There's no, but we didn't have there's no heads up sometimes. It just is what it is. And so now I will have so much time back. And so I'm thinking about what I'm going to do to fill that time. One of the things that occurred to me over this past Christmas break, it was the first Christmas break that both of my boys were gone. Usually, if both of them are not with me, one or the other is with me. And it took a huge toll on my mental health they were both gone for about a month. And it was a really hard time for me to get through that holiday season, because the holidays have always been we've always been very close, and we had our traditions and the things that we like to do together during that time. And so it was really hard. I had a really hard time this past Christmas. And so one of the things that is that I'm also thinking about is just like, what am I going to do to take care of my mental health? So, do I need to reach out to my therapist and go sit on that couch 6 months out so that I can prepare myself for what the feelings are going to be that come flooding? Because listen, I told myself I was happy that they were both gone for Christmas. Okay. I was excited about everything that I was going to get into, and I found myself on that couch in tears. All right. So as happy as I think I'm going to be about becoming an empty nester and having all these fun adventures and moving into a sexy high rise, I am very well aware of the tax that this change may play on my mental health. So that's something that's really important. And also, just a little side note, it is May. This is Maternal Mental Health Month. So check in with your pregnant folks, check in with your mamas, check in with those that you know are making those big, heavy transitions. We all can use a check-in at this time. And then the last thing that I'm preparing for is becoming the consultant mom. And that's something I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into when I do the critical analysis on this. So just put a pin in consultant mom and how I become a consultant mom. So that's it. I would love to hear what you would think about, becoming an empty nester. I would love to hear from other mothers, especially those who are single moms or divorced moms. And those of you who are young mothers, right? We've seen the memes. I think they're so funny. Those memes that are like, I'm on my cruise ship with all my drinks while y'all are with your toddlers. Because I had my kids young. I'm really looking forward to that. But I also know that there's levels to everything, right? And so I want to be sure that for all of us, that I'm taking the steps and we're all taking the steps to be healthy, happy, and whole so that this transition is as good as it can be with what we have control of. All right. And for our final segment, this is the What I Love About segment. And I want to talk to you about what I love about Houston. Now, I talked all that mess about I'm probably going to be an expat and I'm going to leave this city. And the truth of the matter is Houston is the city that finally feels like home to me. So I grew up as a military brat. My father was in the Army and retired from the Army. I then joined the Army. My entire life has been a series of moves every 3 to 4 years. And I finally got to Houston. Now, let me say this. At first, I didn't think I was going to stay here. I really didn't. I'm going to tell you why in a second. I thought I was going to be here for 3 years. That's my usual 3-4 years, and then I'm out. But we stayed here. And we stayed here because Houston just grew. It definitely grew on me. So this is what I say to transplants, people who come to Houston from other places all the time. This is a city that really has to open up to you. Houston is very underground, right? You kind of got to be in the know. You have to know, you have to find a tribe first. And when you find your tribe, that's when things seem to open up and blossom. UGK is called the Underground Kings for a reason. We get it, right? It's very slow moving, very, kind of off in the cut, but we love it. It's a wonderful city. And this is the city that I raised my boys in. This is the city where I truly grew into my grown womanhood. I mean, I was a grown woman before, but this is where it got solidified, right? And so I am looking forward to what will happen next. I'm also building a couple of businesses. And so this is definitely the city that has been the best for me to do that. The best for me to raise these boys in the way that I felt was true to them, true to me, and give them the opportunities. I mean, they're doing the damn thing, okay? So Houston has been good to us. So I'm just, I don't want to leave Houston because I don't like it anymore. This is my city. Houston is my home. And I'm just excited to see what new comes, what will be for me here.